In a country where bills and politicians are voted upon by populace, wouldn't you expect everyone to show up on election day? Unfortunately, this isn't the case. And in fact, only 70% of the population actually register to vote on most elections. That's registering. That's not even counting the actual amount of people that vote. This means that our population isn't actually being properly represented. And isn't that the point of voting in the first place? Well, so it's funny to think that even in the United States, not all of its citizens used to have their right to vote. In fact, it took multiple political and social movements for us to be where we are today. So can you see why practicing your First Amendment right is such a big deal? Well, so not only is it important for you to express your opinions, but your individual vote actually counts towards something, even in presidential elections. So not only is it in your best interest to vote, but it's also in the best interest of the country. So why is voting in your best interest? Well, because you get firsthand say on some of the politicians that represent your ideas and talk for you as the people of whether it be your state or your district. And you get to vote on measures and laws that directly affect your life. Things such as building a new highway or a tax that goes towards children's education. It all depends. Say, in Oregon, we just had to vote on whether or not we should decriminalize hard drugs, and it ended up getting passed, so it's now decriminalized, the possession of hard drugs. See, that is something that was made a change in the state based off of the populace's vote, right? So you have a say on what goes in your state or in your community or in your country. So why wouldn't you express that right? Not only this, but it also affects you in the long term. You have to vote on Social Security, welfare, Medicaid, things like this. These are long-term things that can affect you even when you're 70. So, now can you see why it's important to vote? Well, even if you didn't get past the why it's important for you, it's also important for the country. Your individual vote may not seem like much, but it actually can make a really big difference. And one example of this is in one of the National Geographic articles, they were comparing the Al Gore versus George W. Bush election. Now, you see, this election came down to a recount in one state, and that state was Florida. It ended up going down to one district. It was a difference of 500 votes. 500 votes. Can you imagine if Al Gore's outreach had just hit maybe 700 more people in that area? We would have had a completely different president. That is crazy to think that just that small group of people helped decide the outcome for the next 8 years of our country, because George W. Bush was president 2000 through 2008. So it can affect the country in a large way just by a few individuals voting. So if we had more people showing up to the polls and if we had more people turning in their ballots, then we would have a better representation of what this country actually wants in its future. And you don't have to vote you have to vote even if it doesn't represent your ideas. I mean, you don't have to, it's your choice, but you can also express ideas that go against what the government wants or goes against what the government is encouraging. You have a right to express your opinion, and you can express that any way you want, and you can still end up doing it by voting. So, you see, voting's a lot like a web, okay? And this web has your inner circle. So, your inner circle is your community, right? And so, you only have a couple points on this web, and that is your individual vote. But, so, I know, bear with me, this is a really bad web, but, so, if that middle point is you, right? all of these points are things that you vote towards, okay? And they're all connected with your best interest. And so the larger the demographic of the vote, the farther away it is going to be to your connection, but it's still connected to you. Even if you were looking at the world's biggest web, it still comes back to the middle, and you're always at the center of your web. So everything you vote for is like being a collective of your web. So that's the best I can explain it, but I hope that made sense to you. So that is why it's so important, not only in the bigger picture for you to vote, but also in the smaller picture for yourself. Now, there's also a third reason why you should vote, and that's history. The United States has had a history of not allowing some of its citizens to vote. Me being a female Mexican, I know just as well the Chicano movement and the women's suffrage movement. Do you understand how big of a deal that was? Those people risked their lives just so that we could have our right to vote. And so many of us take that for granted. We need to pay homage to our historians, and we need to pay homage to the people that fought so hard for us to gain our First Amendment right. It may seem like such a simple thing, but it actually has such a complex background. So, it's extremely important that everyone in the United States votes, because we want to see a future where it's what the people want, not what's in the best interest for big corporations or what's in the best interest for the government itself. It's what's in the best interest for the American people, not just one demographic. So, voting doesn't have to be about red versus blue. It can be about what's best for you and what's best for your community or state or country. Thank you.